On today's hot sheet, I'm discussing housing inventory and house price shifts from the 2000s through today. Today is Monday, October 30th, 2023. I am Byron Lazine, and the hot sheet starts now. Okay, welcome to a big, enormic, seismic week here on the hot sheet. Yes, it's a huge week because the FOMC, Jerome Powell, and the cronies, they'll be meeting starting tomorrow. They'll be meeting on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week to decide what to do with the federal interest rate. We're going to be covering the entirety of Jerome Powell's comments, specifically what he says about housing on Thursday morning's show. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to this channel so you don't miss any of it. Also, if you don't want to miss the best of our content, make sure you're subscribed to BAMX. It's where we put all of our courses, our extra content, our live streams, and our Facebook community, as well as our daily downloads of the hot sheet each and every single day. So use code HOT to get 10% off of BAMX today. Let's take a look at inventory as we do each and every single week to start off here on the hot sheet. We're looking for an increase in inventory. We're looking for a weekly change each and every single week. We've been saying that forever. We want to get back to at least even. And October 28th of last year was the peak for inventory, was the seasonal peak for 2022. It was October 28th. Logan Mohtashami, covering Altos Research, he believes that with mortgage rates near 8% and the growth rate of inventory picking up right now, we're starting to see more inventory at a faster rate than we've seen throughout the year. He believes that the inventory peak will happen later this year. Just based off of what I'm seeing, I agree with that sentiment. Let me know if you agree in the comments. Do you agree that come, I don't know, 2 weeks as we're sitting here just before the Thanksgiving, when a lot of people will start to pull their properties off the market seasonally because of the holidays? I don't want to show it through Thanksgiving. I'm going to last 2 weeks of November. I'm going to have people over. I'm going to be having things going on with my family. And they end up taking their home off of the market. And they say, you know what, I'm going to punt this thing out until maybe even after the December holidays. Well, what do you think you're going to see this year? Do you think in 2 weeks from today, tomorrow being Halloween, okay, so 2 weeks from today, do you believe you're going to have more or less inventory in your market? Logan and I'm making the same bet. I think we're going to have more going over the next couple of weeks. Okay, so weekly inventory change for this last week of the 20th to the 28th, inventory rose from just over 554,000 to 562,556. That 562,000 and a half plus is the inventory peak for 2023 so far. Okay, the inventory peak in 2015, just for an example, was 1.17 million. So we're well off of that normal market. So same week last year, we were topping out at 578,000 plus. We're at 562. If we take a look at the chart, which will be available for you in your daily download for BAMX members, you can see that we're just about there. Now, we were at this level for quite a period of time last year as those interest rates started to increase. Talking about the inventory level, I don't know if we're going to have that flattening out because we're later in the season now. I talk about those holidays for a reason. That's a real thing. People take their homes off the market during that time period. But will our peak actually touch last year's highest level or surpass it? That's the belief that I have before we start to see that December inventory reduction. If you look at last year, December, we were on the downside. Inventory started to decrease throughout the month of December. If you look week over week, December 2nd, it was down last year to 549,000. December 9th, it was down to 535,000. December 16th, 521,000. December 23rd, 507,000. December 30th, 490,000. Those drops in inventory in December aren't because demand was increasing rapidly in the month of December of 2022. It's because people were taking their homes off of the market and waiting till their perception of their spring market, whatever that means in their local environment. Now, what ended up happening last year as well was inventory continued to drop not only in January, but throughout February as well. And if you remember, January, February, we saw demand come back much sooner than anticipated. In January, the beginning of this year, we had rates near 6%. You could get a rate at 6, somewhere getting them in the high fives. Seems like a long time ago that was happening. So you didn't have as much inventory on the market yet. We were struggling to get new listings in the beginning of the year. And we saw demand come back quickly because, wow, the rate in last October was just 737. Now all of a sudden it's 6. We don't anticipate that to happen going into this winter. I've got a Wall Street Journal story that I'm going to cover that's really important for this week about higher for longer. It's really a lot of this is going to depend on what happens tomorrow and Wednesday and what we cover here on Thursday with the Fed decision looming this week. There's big implications on what the Fed decides to do. 99% chance that they do absolutely nothing. We talked about this on At Knowledge Brokers podcast on Thursday. You can go check that conversation out in depth. Different channel, At Knowledge Brokers pod. All right. Taking a deeper look here at the Altos research, which we do every single Monday as we kick off the hot sheet week. Let's take a look at new listings. New listings has been on a historic low, the lowest ever recorded for the last 13 plus months. The trend line is now basically riding where we were in 2022 or below, and significantly below 2021 on new listings. So we were hopeful. I was hopeful when we saw this peak here from September 8th to September 15th of 49,000 new listings the week of September 8th to 61,000 the week of September 15th. It was like, okay, here we go. For those sellers that feel like they missed it, they're coming on the market now. We're going to get new listings. This rate is ratcheting up, and it's going to create a wave of new listings that just never materialized. And we've actually dipped since then on new listings week over week, down to 59,000 September 22nd week, 57,000. We had a little pop to 58, kind of just holding firm here on this high 50,000 marker. And this week here, as we look back on the last 7 days, we're down to 56,634 on this week for new listing data. So now, listen, last week, we'll see what happens here going into this week. As we hit November last year and the year before, okay, as you go from October to November, look at 2021. Went from 62,000 October 27th new listings on the market to 57,000 plus just by changing the month, October to November. Last year, even more significant. And we would say that we're in more of an inventory crunch like last year when we look at this year. So last year, 56,000 down to 51,000 just on the turn of the month from October to November. So will this dark red line where we're sitting at 56,600 do the same that it's done the last 2 years, have a sharp, rapid decline as we go into November? This is what I talk about with this historic mindset of, man, I didn't realize it's already November. We've been thinking and talking about selling here for the last 30, 60 days. It's something that, came into our family's conversation at the end of the summer. We reached out to you, local agent, expert. You've got the brand in the market. We trust you. We're going to list with you. You've got the listing. And we've been talking to you all fall, but now, geez, I don't know. Halloween, November just snuck up on us. I mean, in 2-3 weeks, we're going to be having Thanksgiving dinner. We just can't imagine listing our home today. And that's a reality that many are going to be faced with. You know how the calendar just creeps up on you. This is something that people are going to be talking about over the next week or two. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the reality of their life. It's often why I advise agents, hey, before the leaves fall, go get those professional photos of that listing, because when the seller decides, let's just punt this thing till next spring, you've got that great photography, end of the summer, beginning of fall photography, especially if you're in an area where leaves come off of the trees. Okay, it's a great strategy to get people locked in as well to that commitment of moving forward. It's part of that strategy session on how to be great in the beginning of the spring market as a listing plan, as opposed to having to wait later in the spring when many of the buyers have already selected their home. So are we going to have that drop on new listings? Now, just if we have this roller coaster drop on new listings like we've seen the last 2 years, doesn't mean that inventory will drop, right? Because the inventory that's on the market right now could accumulate. We could see less sales this week, which is a trend that I've seen throughout many markets in October. Less sales because less people can afford. October is the least affordable market ever recorded for home buyers. Okay, this is the reality of what they are faced with. And so that's why we're seeing transactions drop. So even if we see new listings drop, we could still see that inventory number that we were talking about previously go up. Now, how about price reductions? Fannie Mae had a report out recently that said price reductions are up from this time last year. Altos Research tends to disagree. They disagree again this week. They say 39% of national single-family listings had a price decrease. Okay, in 2022, that number was 43%. Fannie Mae has it opposite. They've got a 4% difference from this year to last year. 2021, it was only 28%. We're tracking decreases on listings right now on prices as we see the softening of demand continue with these higher interest rates. It's an important number for us to continue to look at each and every single week. All right. We know what's going on here for the rest of the week with the Fed meeting. That's going to really have an impact on things like this 10-year treasury yield, as well as even potentially what it does to 30-year fix. And you see here, U.S. Mortgage Banker Association Purchase Index down at a really significantly low level, even lower than Q2 of 2020, which seems mind-boggling because in the beginning of that whole thing, there was a time period where nobody was doing anything, but we even have lower demand than that, according to Mortgage Banker Association. All right. There's your Altos Research update on the market here for this week. Let's go to something Lance Lambert is covering here with home prices. Okay. He's covering this on Twitter X as well as in his new club called Resi Club. U.S. house prices obviously are up. We know that. It's up 127% from the crash bottom, 67% from the 2000s housing bubble peak. Okay. Listen to that. The 2000s housing bubble peak, the greatest peak of all time in the history of residential real estate. We are up today 67% on home prices. Shows you the value of being a home owner. Shows you how important it is to just own a home for the long term, especially if you're like, I'm going to be in a location for a significant period of time. Timing goes out the window, and length of time on the ownership is all that matters. 67% up from the 2000s housing bubble peak, 42% up from March of 2020, 2% up year over year, and 0.5% up from the 2022 peak. Yes, the 2022 peak isn't the most recent peak. Now is the most recent peak. Today is still buying below the next peak. There will be another peak. I can promise you that based on history. Home price shift since the housing crash bottom in 2011 to 2012. Phoenix up 242%. Las Vegas up 240%. This is from the bottom. Tampa up 231%. The U.S. is again up 127. D.C. is up 78%. New York 73%, and Baltimore 66%. This home price shift, home price data through September 2023, is available. This entire chart right here is available in the daily download for BAMX members. Use code HOT to get 10% off, so you can grab this and use this in whatever market that pertains to you. So you've got the month over month, like let's just take Phoenix at the top here. Month over month is up 0.3%. Year to date is up 1.9%. Year over year for Phoenix, not setting a new peak. Year over year, down 4.2%, down from the peak, their peak of 22, 8.5% in Phoenix. But since March 2020, up 48.4%. So more than the 42% nationally. So their peak went higher than most nationally. And so when people in Phoenix, if I'm an agent in Phoenix, people are saying, hey, our market's down from last year, we're down 8%. The wheels are falling off of this market. I would say, hey, we are down 8.5%, but we went up 48.4% since March of 2020, where the rest of the US only went up 42%. Phoenix is in high demand for people relocating from other areas of the country. That demand isn't going to go away while we have 8% interest rates. It's just going to be dampened. As we come out of this, which we will at some point, we're going to see this demand come back to Phoenix because of all that we have to offer, because of all of the growth that we're experiencing, because of all of the new, not only development, but new community aspects that are being built out here in the Phoenix region. Listen to that. Clip that out if you're a Phoenix agent. I think I could come into your market and maybe do some selling. Okay, so since the 2000s housing bubble peak, Phoenix is up 48.1%. Change since housing crash bottom, Phoenix is up 252.3%. If you want to shout out a location, I'll do a couple more of these here. I don't know if I'll do the full pitch that I did on Phoenix. I do love that area of the country. Miami is up 0.5% month over month. Year to date, up 5.7%. And since the 2022 peak, Miami is up a screaming 5.4%. Miami is setting new record after new record. When will that Miami market slow down? If you're an agent there, you might be saying never, but I'm sure that it will at some point. Since March 2020, Miami 55.8% since March of 2020, well beyond the national marker. Obviously, Miami was a hot spot during 2020, 2021, 22 for people wanting to move there. Since the 2000s housing bubble peak, 44.8% for Miami. And then the change since housing crash bottom in Miami, 228.4%. Okay. Let's take if you want to throw one out there, I'm happy to take a look at that one. Let's take a look at Houston, 0.4% down month over month, 1.4% up year to date, minus 1.2% year over year. So year over year down, year to date up for Houston. And look at this number for Houston. Since the 2000 housing bubble peak, up 96.7%, 36.7% since March of 2020. So below the national average. Again, this entire chart here, if you've got a feeder market you're interested in, this is the 30 largest housing markets. The source is Zillow Home Value Index. This is without a seasonal adjustment, but you have all of the different columns here to go off of. So if you've got 2 or 3 different feeder markets, if you're in Austin and you want to, hey, the numbers aren't looking good for Austin year over year. But if you want to know about your feeder markets and kind of, if I'm in Austin, for example, and a feeder market might be Los Angeles. Okay, let's just take that. Los Angeles is up 6.7 year to date, while Austin is down 3.7% year to date. Okay, so I might in Austin let some of my Los Angeles leads know these numbers that are thinking about moving to Austin in the future and say now might be the time. Okay, you've set in Los Angeles, you've set a year over year number of plus 3.6%, year to date of 6.7%. We're down 3.7 year to date, down 10% year over year here in Austin. We're down 17.1% from the peak. And now might be the time to do it. Sell your house at a high in Los Angeles, come here to Austin and buy at an opportunity here where you're going to get a deal. Come into Austin and score yourself a deal. So this is how these numbers can help not only in your market, but in your feeder market. That's available again for everybody to download in BAMX. Use code HOT to get 10% off of that. What we're watching here with the most intent eyes is what's going to happen here over the next 24, 48, 72 hours. Jerome Powell, he won't talk about their decision until Wednesday afternoon. Okay. We're going to cover every single, word verbatim on Thursday morning, especially when he mentions housing. That's where we're really going to pick apart what he says and what the questions are that he responds to, if any, for the housing market. But we're going to be watching what the 10-year Treasury yield does leading up to that. Oh, it's just 4.9. And just as we clicked over here, a little good vibes from the hot sheet ticked down to 4.899. So not much happening here with the 10-year as we lead up. Just kind of, there it goes to 4.901. But not much happening overall. This is kind of the range that we've been in, but we'll see how it reacts going into that meeting. One of the reasons why we want to really watch this is there's a belief from Nick Timiraos, who I've mentioned before, Wall Street Journal reporter. He's like the Adam Schefter of the Fed. If the Fed's going to leak something out, they leak it out to Nick T. And so that couple days before the meetings, you always want to read Nick T on Wall Street Journal. If there's anything that's relevant or important, I'll definitely share it here. This is one of those moments. He wrote this article, came out at 5:30 a.m. Okay, so what's unique about a 5:30 a.m. article on a Monday morning? It means that he had information at some point, end of the week, over the weekend, given to him. This is just my assumption. He had information given to him, fed from the Fed, so that he could prepare a Monday morning piece of information. As everybody's on the train, New York City, commuting, starting their day. It's early on the West Coast right now, 6:52 a.m. Good morning, West Coasters. Everybody that's starting their day, their big week, their big Fed week, they could read this Nick T piece of information. And the headline is, higher bond yields could end the Fed's historic rate rises. Okay, we've been like, these higher bond yields have been killing us. They've put the 30-year up over 8% for the first time since the year 2000. It's the most unaffordable housing market we've seen. And all of a sudden now, there's a headline in the Wall Street Journal from the Adam Schefter of the Fed, Nick T, saying higher bond yields could end the Fed's historic rate rises. So we know that 99% of the market has a pause priced in for this week, meaning they're not going to increase, they're not going to decrease. But there was a lot of speculation that in the December meeting, we're going to see one final increase. What Nick T is saying is that he may have some information, because as he often does get insider information, that he kind of floats it out there as a scenario that could happen, and then it likely always does happen when he puts it out there, that these higher bond yields, these 5% on the 10-year, okay, that we cracked for the first time since 2007 just recently, could be enough to end the Fed's historic rate rises. Federal Reserve officials have said for more than a year that beating inflation could require them to hold interest rates higher for longer than investors expected. We've been talking about that. Look at the 10-year Treasury note yield and what it's done here on the graph below. The swift run-up in long-term Treasury yields around 5% from 4% in early August. We've had a dramatic increase from August. Suggests Wall Street now agrees, okay, that these rates are going to be higher for longer. That's the long-term impact of these. But as a result, borrowing costs for U.S. businesses and households are rising in ways that could allow the Fed to suspend its historic run of interest rate increases. Because a resilient economy, right? We talked about it last week. If you missed any of the hot sheets last week, definitely go back and give a listen. We're on Spotify and Apple, if that's better for you. We're available there. Love to get a review on both of those platforms from hot sheet followers. We really need some reviews on those. So it'd be great if you have Apple, podcast or Spotify podcast. If you go and leave us a review there, we can't do reviews on YouTube. Love for you to consider doing that. But go back and listen. We talked about the GDP going up in Q3 for this year, well beyond the wildest expectations, and the economy is ripping, right? This resilient economy threatens to slow progress on inflation. The impact of higher yields on the economy is set to feature prominently in the deliberations at the Fed's two-day policy meeting that begins on Tuesday. Okay, so this is going to, what Nick T is saying is, hey, I've got information. I talked to the 12 people in the FOMC. I think he has a pipeline to Jay Powell exclusively. And what he's saying is over the next 2 days, they're going to be talking about the impact of these higher yields and what it's doing to the economy and what it could do to the economy. This is going to be front and center. And so if they come out of this 2 days saying, let's bring down the treasury yield, let's make sure that the 10-year doesn't get up to 5.5 or something, guess what that'll be good for? That'll be great for the 30-year fixed rate. As the 10-year drops, historically, the 30-year follows. And so if that's going to be something they come out of this meeting looking to do to make sure that this doesn't continue to increase, then, because remember, they still have to sell debt, right? They've got to, they still have debt in this country that we need to go and get investors for, okay? But that could mean that we're going to obviously get a 30-year fix that goes lower. We ended last week at 7.88. On Friday, it was just up a tick from the 7.87 on Thursday, but below the week prior's 8 and 8.03 peaks. The Freddie Mac 30-year fixed weekly survey came in at 7.79, the highest since 2000. All right, lots to be looking for this week. We'll be covering it all here on the Hot Sheet. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. We've got a real word tomorrow as that class action lawsuit happening in Kansas City for real estate agents takes its final arguments this week. And we're going to have a jury verdict this week. That's the expectation. Gary Keller took the stand on Friday. That was fascinating. We'll round up everything as we've been every single week on tomorrow's Real Word. So stay with us, obviously, for that. Just a lot going on this week. I'll be with you every single step of the way. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in live, and for everybody that listens or watches the replay. Thank you very much. We'll see you back here tomorrow, 9:30 on the East, 6:30 on the West. Until then, toodaloo.